So what I want to talk about is some seller objections, things you're going to get at the table with the seller. And so one of the first most common challenges of today sitting with the seller is what would be, you think, you guys think would be the biggest objection right now sitting with the seller? Somebody take a stab. Okay, I'll go first. We want to list higher. What would be a good follow-up question to that? We want to list higher. Anybody? Hello? Dilruba?
Ask why. You need to ask why
Ask
he
why.
thinks they want to list it higher. You
Right.
have to find out the why.
Right. So the why is going to be, guys, it's always going to be like you always want to be curious. You don't want to, you want to make sure when you're asking why, it's out of curiosity. Okay, great. That's great. Can you tell me why? Can I ask what led you to that number? You want to know where that number came from, because then that's going to obviously set you up for the next question to ask, that so that it shows that you're being more consultative with the seller and not question them like why, and disagreeing. You're going to set yourself up for a failed listing appointment. But if you ask from, oh, that's great. Can you tell me, what led you to that number? You want to know the source of where they're getting their information, so that if they say like, well, whatever, if it's Zillow, then you know how to address a Zillow, which we'll talk about that next, because a lot of sellers are going to Zillow first. They're going to Redfin. They're going to any other site. And then before they have met with you, so they already have a number in mind, or they might have seen their neighbor's house sell at a certain price last year, and they want to sell at that same price. Obviously, we all know that prices have not stayed or have adjusted. And so they're not the same as they were last year. So always asking, coming from curiosity. Thank them for answering the question. Thank you for that. Thanks for that. We want to list higher. Okay, great. Can you tell me what led you to that number? It's very non-threatening, and it's very like you care, like you want to know what the source is. Once you know the source, then you know if it's coming from emotion or if it's coming from, again, is it the neighbor's house that sold last year? Are they looking at Zillow, whatever it is? And we can handle these objections more by asking questions than trying to justify or try to explain, because then it can become confrontational. And we don't want to do that, because then they're going to shut down and just say you're trying to sell them. You don't want to sell. You want to be a consultant. And when it comes to a listing appointment, so keep that in the back of your mind when you're doing that. Another thing you can say is like, remind them what the goal is. Your goal is to, okay, great. Well, your goal is to be out of the home within the next 2 months. And in order to do that, that is my goal, obviously, is to maximize your equity in your house that you have, and to help you do exactly that. The concern is that if we start higher, buyers may never see the value in your home, or your home is the best value, basically, right? Does that make sense? And then we could end up having to sell the house, and or helping your competition sell their house first, and then your house is going to sit on the market. And in some cases, if the house sits on the market for 21, 30 days and we have no showings, then we have to go into what's called the price reduction. When we reduce the price, sometimes that still doesn't do it, and we may not end up at the price that I'm suggesting even at this point. Also, too, it's about exposure. If a buyer sees a house online and they're going, that house is overpriced, do you think they're going to tell their agent they want to see it? No, they're not going to want to see it. And that's what you need to explain as a consultant to the seller, that I have your best interest, and my goal is to help you maximize the equity on your house and sell your house within the shortest amount of time. In order to do that, we need to think of strategy. What strategy are we using? What strategies are we using in order to maximize that? One thing is going to be that we price competitively. So if you have other houses that are similar on the market, you want to showcase those homes. Well, the home down the street is almost a match model, and it's been sitting on the market for 60 days. it's priced at this dollar amount. So if you come in even higher, the chances are we probably won't even end up with the showing. And if you, in order to meet your goals of being out of the house within the next couple months, then we need to think about where we are, because pricing is what activates showings on your home and receiving offers on your home. And the best case scenario, even in today's market, if the house is completely ready to go, move-in ready, beautiful, updated, et cetera, et cetera. And you guys will have to determine this and discern this when you guys get to the house. If the house is if they've remodeled it and ready to go, it's still important to be very competitive on pricing at home, because you can use the term, if we price it competitively and below the neighbor's home, we hope that would generate a multiple offer situation. And that's always, you want to use the word hope. If you're trying to use like the strategy of trying to get a multiple offer situation going, you want to make sure that you're using the terms of hope. Use the word hope, because if you promise them that you're going to get multiple offers if we price it at this dollar amount and you don't, then you've made that promise. So make sure you're very careful with the choice of words that you use when in your conversations. Hope. I've always said this for many years. Even in the market when we were getting multiple offers, I would still use the word hope, because I don't want to get them to come back to me and say, hey, you told us that we were going to get multiple offers and we didn't. So make sure that your choice of words that you're using, and practice. You want to study the home that you're going to go to and do a listing presentation. Do all your homework. Do all your homework. Do your comparables. Come up with a low, a medium, and a high range for the home. Don't give them any price until you actually tour that home and ask lots of questions. So that's a totally different topic. We'll get into that. Because pricing, again, creates activity on the home, not the other way around. So it's really important that you guys, if somebody talks about we want to list higher, that's a very common theme in today's market, because some sellers are still stuck in pricing from a couple of years ago when they were much higher. So you want to prepare them, set the expectations at your initial meeting, and by asking questions, especially if they say we want to list higher. Okay, great. Can you tell me what led you, or what led you to that number? Right. Start with that. Take it from there, and then there's just a whole list of things. What you want to practice when you're doing script practice for going on listing appointments, you don't. You want to practice questions more, I think, than scripts. Or they're both important, but even when you're practicing scripts, those really consist of a lot of questions. Because if you're just practicing responses, then you're selling. You're trying to sell. It's just a sale. When you come from curiosity and you care about them and you're asking questions, you're being a consultant. So make sure when you go into your listing appointments that it is about them. It is about helping them achieve their goals. It is about helping them generate, hopefully, a multiple offer situation. But I can't tell you exactly what to say, but what questions to ask. You will need to know that. But again, you want to practice the questions. If you read the book, again, exactly what to say. Those are a lot of questions, because guys, what is that saying? He who asks the most questions, give me the response.
When?
They control. Those who ask the most questions control the conversation, basically. And asking questions, guys, helps you. Asking the right questions will help evoke the answers that you want. You will lead them to where you want them to be based on the questions that you ask. So when you get that objection about we want to list higher, you got to go deep on the questions. You got to find out exactly what the source is, and don't justify. Use data, ask more questions, use data, and then talk strategy. So does that make sense? I hope that was helpful. Question 2. If you get this response, Zillow says it's worth more than what you're telling me. I need somebody to help me with an answer to that. Even if you've not been on a listing appointment, what do you think you could say?
I think you could say something like, First of all, we don't know how recent that data is, and is it the same location? I would think I would be thinking that.
Sure. So, and you're go ahead. Go ahead, Mesrop.
Oh, I would say, I think that it's just an algorithm. It doesn't actually know what your house looks like. It hasn't pulled comps. And if you ever list a house and then you'll notice whatever price you list, it'll change the next day on was what it said this estimate was like the day before.
Zillow also has properties that have been on the market for the last 3 years that are no longer on the market. Zillow can't be trusted.
Okay. Would you say this to a seller?
Mm,
Yeah, I'll tell them it comes off an algorithm. It doesn't actually know what your house looks like.
So look, that's really I like that because I've used that same response. But you want to start with you never want to talk bad about any of those sites to any of the consumers because they rely on those sites a lot and they actually unfortunately trust those sites a lot too. Like that's where the consumer goes. They're going to Redfin, they're going to Zillow, they're going to Homes. Whatever it is. So you never want to, especially Zillow. You don't want to go neg on the Zillow, even though it's true. And I would say that yes, and I've used that response where Zillow is all based on algorithms, and the values actually change daily, so they're not going to be the same consistent, and they're not really comparing apples to apples. But I always preface as I always say something like, "Oh, yeah, Zillow's a great site, and it's a great starting point." And then I would go into however, and then go into like the algorithm message or comparing apples to apples, those types of things. We don't know. It's all set up on an algorithm and it changes constantly. And then you can go into what you do. You're the consultant. So what do you do in order to come up with your home value? That's where you go through the data. That's where you go through the statistics. That's where you go through your actual comparisons because you're matching apples for apples. And I always reference this, guys. I always reference this. This is what an appraiser would do. They would go keep the house or keep the comparisons as close as possible to the subject property, bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage, usually within 10% of your square footage either way. And I would go through into that detail, like use the appraiser standards in your conversation, so it builds trust with the client that you know what you're doing. And if you do that, then it's going to solidify you as like the true expert. So that's a really good. So that's what I would do, and that's what I do when I'm in a listing appointment. It takes the guard down. It takes their eyesight or their mindset. It takes them off of Zillow at that point, and then we could just move on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then one thing you could say too, because I've used this as well, and it kind of goes back to if you guys go onto the Zestimate section of Zillow and you guys actually read in the Zestimate itself, it does say that the Zestimate is not intended to be used as an appraisal. So it does say something to that effect in there, and you could also bring that up in your conversation to them. Because again, you always want to start off with not like trying to defend or like Zillow's a bad site and they're incorrect. You want to start off great. Oh yeah, Zillow's a great site and it is a great starting point. However, da 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 da, and exactly like what you said, Mesrop. It's the algorithm. It's comparing. It's like what Jonathan said. Those properties sit at that point. You've taken them off the Zillow boat, if you will. So that's a Zillow question you're going to be asked. But always say something like, "Well, Zillow says it's worth more." Okay, great. Start off with that so that you're acknowledging what they say, but you're keeping it positive. And then say, "Zillow's a great site, and it's a great starting point. It can be a great starting point. However," then you can go into what you just said, the algorithm, the comparing the sitting of the properties for X amount of time. And if you look at it tomorrow, the value could be different. I take a different approach to determining your home's value. And this is what I do. So be prepared to then start talking about your comparisons and the square footage of each property You don't have to, and if they get into, well, my house has this amenity, my house has this amenity, my house has that amenity. Okay, that's great. I'm also taking that into consideration as well. Because again, my goal is to help you maximize the equity of your home or the net proceeds of the sale of your home, and to help you meet your goal of moving or selling, getting the home sold this time, Mesrop, in your case, because you work with expireds, right? So those are some of the verbiage words you can use in your conversations with sellers. Does that help? Is that good?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Okay. How about this? What if a seller tells you, another agent said, they could get more. Another agent said they could get more, get me more money. Has anybody heard that on a listing?
That's a good one.
Mesrop, have you heard that?
No, I don't have a response to that.
Okay. Anybody else? Jonathan?
He stepped out.
Oh, he did. Okay. Okay. And then he stepped out. Okay. And then let's see, Thelma, you've been on plenty.
Me, I would like to learn how you will overcome that.
Yeah. Another agent, they said they could get me more money, because it is going to be how you'd overcome that. So the first thing you want to do is acknowledge it and thank the seller for saying that. That says that you're listening to them and you care about what they have to say. I appreciate you saying that. Can I ask you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, what you like most about what they shared? What is that going to do when they answer that question? That's going to give you the opportunity or know what question to ask next.
You said
I appreciate you sharing that. Can I ask you what you like most about what they shared? Go ahead, Mesrop.
no, I was just confirming I heard you correctly.
Yeah. Can I ask what you liked most about what they shared? Because depending on how the seller responds is going to determine the next question you're going to ask. And again, you're coming from a consultative perspective, so you want to make sure you're asking questions that pertain to their answers. Because if they are off in right field, you got to bring them back home, right? So unless you know where they are and where they got the information, then you can't really form a response. So you want to be able to do that. So another thing you could say, Lucy, is like every agent can suggest a price. The market is the one that decides. Buyers decide what they're going to pay for a home. And I've used that multiple times, especially in this market. Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I can respect that. Thank you for sharing that. Every agent's going to suggest a list price. However, just so you know, the market determines what your home is going to sell for. Obviously, buyers decide what they're going to offer on your home. So we have to come up, with a price that is going to attract buyers to your home so that we can receive offers, right? And then it just kind of makes sense. And you're just being a consultant, and what's the seller going to say? They're going to disagree with that? Absolutely not. They're not going to disagree with that.
Yeah.
But again, you want to state what your responsibility is. My responsibility, my goal, responsibility is to recommend a strategy. You are the consultant. You are the one coaching them through this entire selling process. I want to help you come up with the strategy that's going to give you the best chance of achieving your goals. So always in every conversation, when they start going off track, you want to remind them of what their goals are, what your goal is, and your responsibility is to help them achieve their goals. I promise you, if you do that, you're going to win every listing appointment, every single one of them. And then we'll go through one. Go ahead.
Can I say something?
Yep.
I know we gonna tell them that's what we do every day, and we know what we're doing, but usually there's gonna say, okay, the other person is an agent too, so he's gonna get me more money. They're not gonna hear anything else. They just want to hear more money. That's what I think. I don't know. And
And you know what? That could be true. And even if it is about that, you have to go back to, Lucy, what's most important for them. Like, why are they selling in the first place? And again, you want to restate, yes, I can respect that. And every agent is going to suggest a list price. My goal and my responsibility is to help you come up with a strategy that's going to help you achieve your goals of selling your house in the timeline that you want and get you to where you want to be if they're retiring, moving out, or whatever it is. Take them back to that, because that is your priority. If at the end of the day they go, no, I'm going to go with the other agent, then you keep in contact with them, or just watch the house, because if it doesn't sell in 6 months, obviously, then there's an opportunity for another conversation. How's everything going? Right. So but you don't want to just go, okay, and just kind of walk away. You want to keep asking questions. You want to remind them of what their goal is, what their purpose, why are you selling in the first place? Let's go back to that. You have a goal at the beginning. My responsibility is help you come up with the strategy and achieve the goal of this and this and this and this and this. But if they're going, well, the other guy said he could still do that. Okay. Do you have a copy of and sometimes they'll have it. Do you have a copy of the comparables or the CMA, the homes that he showed you or that he compared your home to? So get real curious and get real questionable. You want to see what they're looking at, because they could be getting a snow job because the other agent just wants the listing. So, but you don't want to just give up and walk away. You want to help them, keep reminding them of what your responsibilities and what your goal is to help. You want to help them achieve their goals, whatever it is, and remind them why they're selling in the first place. So, an example, I have a listing in Vacaville. It was the same thing. They had this price in mind. They wanted 800,000. I was like 725. We went 50-50. We kind of met in the middle, did 750. We got an offer, but it took 38 days, but we were just 5 days away from a price reduction. That would have it still would have net them less. So you gotta, and I didn't give up. I kept in the conversation with them, asking them questions. So you got to stay in it, ask more questions, and then you'll usually get to where you want to be. Or they're just going to be like, nope, I'm just stuck on the money. This guy told me he could do it. And, then you have to pick, like, do you really want that listing at that point? Right? Are they going to listen to you in any way, shape, or form? So don't let it get to that point early enough. You want to stick in the game. Don't give up. Eventually you're going to get there. Any questions on that?
thank you.
Did that help, Lucy?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so it is, what time is it now? It's 12:38. All right, guys. I don't know how long John keeps you guys on here. I have one more I want to talk about really quick, because you're going to get this one too. These are like all the common questions I'm getting in listing appointments or talking to people, especially even on the phone, like past clients. We're going to wait. What's going to be your first response? We're going to wait.
My first response is going to be, why would you want to wait? And then remind them of their goal.
So anytime they respond, guys, or they say a response or give an objection, great. Or I can respect that. Thank you for sharing that. Always start with thanking them and acknowledging first, and then ask your question next. I completely understand. You want to get on their page, and they're going to go, oh, okay, they understand, they're on my side. You're not going to stay there and then follow them down the road, but that gives you an opportunity, or it tells them that I care about you. I understand what you're saying. I completely understand. And then go into where you need to go. So if it means like, there's always going to be different responses for this. One of them that's coming to mind for me is, what are you hoping will be different if you wait? What do you feel will be different if you wait? What are you hoping for will be different if you wait? What are you hoping for? What does that question ask? What does that question do? It opens it up, right? So you guys can identify why they're waiting, why they want to wait. Or if it's just they're just playing games, right? Why do you want to wait? What are you hoping will be different? That's going to open up the conversation for you to go find out exactly what it is that you need to ask, what you need to say. Then what you would say is, if those things don't change, what would be your plan? And there's also one thing that I use, especially if they are in a like a timeline, a time crunch. There's always the waiting period in today's market. The average days on market is da 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 da. If you decide to wait, it could prolong your goal of getting to whatever Los Angeles or wherever they're moving to, out of state. It could prolong the and the pricing could be different if you wait 2 months. So the best time to sell is now. Remind them, and it will help you get to Utah or wherever they're going to do, whatever they're going to get at, whatever the reason is for moving. Remind them of that. Remind them of why they're doing that. Do that and lead them down the road by asking questions and responding, acknowledging, responding. Because there's always the cost of waiting. So, Mesrop, I think I'm going to wait 6 months before we sell. You could use the cost of waiting response. Does everybody know what the cost of waiting is? The cost of waiting is how much you're going to spend on that mortgage for the next 6 months. And that's going to be that much less that they're going to get or receive as a net by waiting that long to sell, if they need to sell for money. So depending on why they're saying they're going to wait, you should have a response ready to go at that point, and then be able to ask more questions. So
Can I give something to that?
yep, go ahead.
I think rates are too high, so I think if we hold off till summer, maybe we can get a better price.
Okay, great. Well, how would you respond to that?
Well, I don't know, I'm asking.
Oh, okay. So rates are too high, right? Rates are too high. We're going to wait. Okay, great. I totally understand. Yes, rates have increased. And then what I would normally do is I would say, what kind of rate are you looking for or hoping for? Because then that's going to tell me like, oh, I'm waiting for the 4% rates again. Okay, well then you can go, okay, great. I get that. Like that was a great time in the economy for home buyers because the rates were so low. And with that being said, like that was during a recession, and those were temporary rates that we had during the pandemic. And then I would go into historically the past 30 years, and this is where you guys need to have good information, and somebody could get it to you. But if you can actually research it yourself. You look at a 30-year span of interest rates over the past 30 years before the pandemic, before the rates dropping through the floor. If you look at the trend before that, historically, the lowest rate was 4.75. And there's an actual spreadsheet, and it talks about the last 30 years. And it tells you where the rates have been the last 30 years. And on average, the lowest rate that has been at 4.75. So yes, we're at 5.75, we're at 5.85, we're at 6%. That's what is predicted, and that's what we're having the market going forward right now. Now, if they're going to sell and buy, then I would also bring into, again, why are they selling? What's most important to them about selling now? And you also have options for rate buy downs or different things like that. That has gotten my clients over that needed to buy and sell, because yes, a lot of them are stuck at like, I don't want to lose my rate. But at some point, they're going to have to sell regardless, because it's really not predicted that the rates are going to go down. And there are other options to a rate buy down. There's the 2-1 buy down. Usually the seller will cover for you depending on your offer price, et cetera. So what I use is I just go right back to the data, because there's really nothing else you can say other than the reason for selling, reminding them the reason for selling, tell them what your goal is to help them come up with the strategy to achieve that. The interest, in terms of the interest rates, if we look back 30 years historically, 4.75 has been the average, been the lowest, and right now they're just above that at 6%, and they've been like that the last couple of years, and so it's predicted that they're going to continue to go that direction. But remind them why they're selling too. I would use the reason why they're selling, because sometimes the reason that waiting for the rates to drop and then not being able to fix their house situation is gonna push them to go ahead and move forward and sell the house. Obviously, they had an interest to sell the house in the first place. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had set up an appointment to talk to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I haven't really run into that a lot. More of so just initial conversations. before I can get them to a selling point. But then I kind of go into, even if it's a conversation, well, why do you want to sell in the first place? What would be the reason for selling? I would take that and I would just use that. I run it right into the ground with them because that's going to motivate them to move forward. If they're just saying the rates are too high, I want to wait, and then I would just tell them, well, how important is it for you to move? What is it? Why are you moving? Where are you going to go to? Why is moving to Utah so important to you? Okay. Well, with that being said, I can provide, let's sit down. I can provide you some information about what the rates are doing and where they're probably going to go, and predictability. We can predict where the rates might go, but at this point, this is where they are. But let's have a conversation and see how we can get you the lowest rate possible in your move and get you to where you want to go within the timeline you want to get there. So always come from, thank you for that information. And if you get stuck in a conversation, point in the conversation where they're kind of still pushing back, remind them why they're selling, remind them what's most important about that. You want to bring the emotion back into the conversation and not the logic. They get too stuck in logic, like interest rates, that's logic. They get stuck there and they're not going to come out of there. You've got to remind them of bring them back into emotion. Have you guys heard of the emotion, logic, sales conversation?
Yes, during our breakthrough training.
Okay. So we sell. When do buyers buy? Most times they buy on emotion, right? So when they buy on emotion, there's logic that's involved in the conversation because there has to be logic. But if you have a conversation with somebody, you're building a dream. You're building a dream of where they want to go next. You're building the dream of why they're selling in the first place and helping them achieve that dream. So when you're working and you're in sales, you're building dreams. That's all we're doing is building dreams, right? When I'm recruiting, I'm building dreams and I'm going to make those dreams happen. And you're going to do the same thing. And so with that being said, it's a sales logic. I mean, the sales way, basically. You emotion, logic, emotion, logic, emotion. You start on emotion, you end on emotion in most cases. And that's what your goal is, because you're going to have those points of logic, but you always want to end on emotion. And emotion is helping you achieve your goal that you want and why you want to sell, where you want to be, when you want to be there. Right? What's that going to do for your family? And that sounds all kind of cheesy, but my God, once you start doing it and repeating it, it just kind of comes out in your way. But that's the only way you're going to get through the conversation and get through the sales and get them signing that listing agreement. Was that helpful, Mesrock?
Yeah, definitely.
Yep, good. All right, you guys. So between now and the next one, remember, you don't want to memorize scripts. You want to memorize the questions, because he who asks the most questions controls the conversation, and questions evoke the answers that you want. The right questions will evoke the answers that you want. So it's about asking questions, guys. You want to be consultants. You don't want to be salesmen. We are in sales, but we're consultants, right? So, all right, you guys go kill it. And then John should be back tomorrow. Have a good day. Take care.